Beryl's thick, clumsy hand groped for the on switch behind the bulky food synthesizer. Sticky cobwebs snared his fingers. He cringed, but found the switch and flipped it. Nothing happened. He brushed dust from the blank display panel and poked it to no effect. "Damnation and mortality!" he yelled as he took the infernal machine in both hands and tried to shake it. The synthesizer was a foot taller than him and outweighed him by a factor of 5. He couldn't even rock it a little. The machine crouched in stubborn disrepair beneath a canvas awning. The fabric was woven with solar cells. In an hour, when the sun was higher, the cells would diligently push electrons with nowhere to go. No one would pause in the shade, seeking relief from the sun. No one would be enticed inside to rent tourist guide ornithopters. Next door, the animated temporary tattoo ink had crumbled from the arms of the mannequins. There was no shop owner to reapply it, and no customers to serve as walking advertisements, with cartoon animals chasing each other around the curves of their arms. Next door to that, more dark windows with gimmicky nonsense catering to the whims of human-bodied individuals. The streets were empty. Beryl was alone, as he had been since his exile to Earth. He aimed a final kick at the synthesizer. His foot bounced off the glossy exterior. Pain exploded in his toes, but an internal mechanism shuddered into motion. Electricity flowed. The interface brightened with glyphs of juicy cooked meat and buttery vegetables. "Yes, yes!" Beryl crowed. Then the screen winked to black. The glow faded until the vibrant paneling was as dull and unresponsive as the last dozen units Beryl had found, in the town before this one and the town before that. He slouched, face sagging, arms and shoulders drooping, unaccustomed to Earth's oppressive gravity. Typical. It was enough to make one believe in petty, meddlesome deities. Petty deities, or something similar enough, existed, but Beryl knew they were too self-important to be meddlesome. What Beryl didn't know was how to troubleshoot neglected food synthesizers. And whose fault is that? Why, it's your own damn fault. In preparation for his exile, he could have downloaded practical skills. His body had been constructed by his enemies, but his brain had been his own to fill to its limited capacity. He could have arranged comforting memories or useful knowledge. Instead, he'd packed poison. A catalog of injustices cycled through his mind, feeding his persecution complex, failing to satisfy the whiny infant that was his bodily needs. He'd thought up some jokes at the expense of his persecutors. Why did the transcendent cross the road? To look down on everyone who didn't. And what's the difference between a transcendent and a Greek god? One turns into animals to screw humans, and the other suppresses fantasies of the same. He hoped to come up with some considerably better material. In the meantime, he rehearsed, calling them not by their chosen term, transcendent, but instead referring to them as post-human, or PH, to which he added, not better, just after. Beryl deflated, as if they care. He stood for a moment longer, willing the synthesizer to work, indulging in the fantasy of the machine coming to life. He cursed himself for wishful thinking. His will meant nothing in this mortal physical realm. Sometimes his body didn't even obey his will, and when it did, he paid a tax, his motivation dimming for hours or more. He slunk away. He used to cross light years on a whim. Now he could hardly bear to take a single step. His toes throbbed, but hunger was a cruel taskmaster, driving him onward. He limped to the end of the block. Tufts of grass poked through cracks in the pavement. Unrecognizable dark blotches were all that remained of the appliqué smart advertisements. Their button-sized sensors were powerless to scan the personal information embedded in the tags of Beryl's clothes. Not that it would have done them any good. He'd taken the clothes off racks without paying. There was no one to stop him. None of the clothes he'd found made him comfortable. His underarms and thighs chafed even as slimy sweat ran from his pores. The sun had hardly crested the horizon, but the humid air gripped the previous day's heat. A lean cat bolted from its hiding place under a derelict car, a mouse's tail hanging from its mouth. "I'm not to the point of stealing vermin from cats," Beryl grumbled. "You've got nothing to fear from me." He pushed open the glass door of a corner store. The sun was rising dead center along the east-west street, and the store's windows were wide. But the shadows stretched long, the interior dim. Beryl couldn't see a thing, but he'd learned that human eyes take a minute to adjust to changes in light. He scratched at his dandruff-ridden scalp in frustration. He knew the name of every juror who had voted to convict him. He knew every grudge they held, but he'd had to figure out how eyes worked through trial and error. He'd been surprised that eyes adjusted at all. That, at least, had been a pleasant surprise. He'd been shocked and very nearly injured by the fact that standing up suddenly would cause dizziness bordering on a blackout. He was constantly perturbed by the rapidity with which his body had developed and maintained a craving for sugar. He was pretty sure that itchiness had been maliciously designed into his body as part of his punishment, but maybe existence was inherently itchy and gassy. Who knew? You should have downloaded the owner's manual, Beryl. Instead, you had to be a prick and hold on to your bitterness. He swept out an arm to encompass the darkness. And for what? He shouted. The room consumed his words. Who is there to gripe to? There was no response. Beryl hadn't seen a single human being. He assumed he was the last one on Earth. How or why that had come to pass, he didn't know. He had any number of theories, but none of them made much sense. If he had in fact been exiled to a simulacrum of Earth, then his sentencers didn't understand his psyche at all. He knew enough of mortals to know that he would have been constantly irritated by their desire to talk about their next meal, their previous meal, the weather, or their blood relations. On the other hand, if actual physical Earth had been depopulated, that raised other questions. Which post-human was responsible, and why, and how recently? Many transcendent beings still cared about the world of their origin and its residents. His good friend Water had cared. Beryl's throat constricted, tears stung his eyes. Water's feelings had been labeled regressive by the general PH population, but not by Beryl. I meant to help. He tried to push away the painful thoughts, but his only distraction was discomfort. Beryl leaned against the doorframe while he waited on his eyes. His body was imbalanced, strangely top-heavy despite his belly. One of his legs twisted outward, making walking painful. It was all by design, all terms of his punishment. His stomach grumbled and squelched. Patience, I'm getting to you as fast as I can. He pictured his stomach as a wrung-out rag. Even the image sickened him. Everything was unwelcome and unbidden. Gut sensations came on independently. Thoughts arose from unknown depths of his mind. The best he could do was obey, 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 and hope to quiet the whining. The darkness gradually resolved into aisles of shelves. Beryl sighed and lifted his twisted leg. He expected the sharp stab of pain from putting it down. He wasn't disappointed, except in all the other ways. He trudged past the checkout counter. He skipped the canned goods. He was tired of the soupy filler and samey flavors. His body wanted sugar. There was plenty of food to eat. Shelves were stocked, if dusty. Whatever had swept humanity from the face of the earth had been humane. Maybe Beryl would feel more curious about what that cataclysmic person, place, or thing had been after breakfast. He turned down the aisle he wanted. He squinted at the boxes. The healthier adult cereals were usually rancid, but the sugary children's ones were still safe, assuming mice hadn't gotten into them. Bright cartoon colors stood out on the boxes, even in the dark. He grabbed one. In moments, he was cramming fistfuls of too sweet, grainy squares into his face. The box said they were crunchy and tasty, but age had made them limp and bland. His teeth mashed them into paste. They satisfied certain needs, even as his humiliation deepened. I've been reduced to eating children's cereal. He would have traded his arm for a hot meal. That wasn't saying much. He scratched at a rash. He would have traded his whole body for not having a body. He carried the box of cereal out of the store. Outside, the eerie silence was interrupted by chirping birds and the wind ruffling umbrellas that shaded square tables cluttered with vacant chairs. Beryl shoved another fistful of cereal into his face. He nearly choked in surprise at a loud, throaty "Craw! Craw!" A big black raven looked down at him from the edge of an awning. Its shiny black eyes appeared uncannily smart. He considered whether he'd underestimated how meddlesome one of the post-humans could be. He shook his head. Not even his closest sibling was so petty as to pester him by possessing an animal. "Go away," Beryl shouted. He waved the box at the bird. A smattering of so-called crunchies spilled out. The bird swept down and seized them off the sidewalk. Typical, Beryl thought, outwitted by a dumb bird. "I'll never be rid of you now," he grumbled, even as he threw more cereal at the raven's head. Beryl sank into one of the patio chairs. The rising sun poured heat into the saturated air. An umbrella shaded Beryl from the worst of it. Part of the fabric was torn. It flapped in the light sea breeze. The temperature was tolerable, he decided. The streets had been designed for leisure-class human pedestrians and, inevitably, quirky post-human tourists who enjoyed brief jaunts into human form for the thrill, or the masochism, he thought to himself. The streets he'd been walking for the mere months that he'd been exiled were mostly unobstructed. Driverless cars had dutifully gone home to powerless charging stations. Scattered bikes he'd found had turned out to be death traps. With scraped arms and a rip in his pants, he'd given up trying to ride them. The raven finished cleaning the sidewalk. It hopped toward Beryl, cawing loudly. "I assure you, you don't want to hang around with me," he told it. The raven cocked its head, giving every impression that it was listening, that it wanted to understand. Beryl leaned forward to get a better look at the bird. The feathers on its back were dark black with a purple sheen. It had surprising bulk for a flying creature. The shaggy feathers at its throat made it look streetwise and dangerous. Beryl stared at the bird, and the bird stared back. "You have a certain wisdom, don't you?" he thought. "You know how to not just survive in a body, day in and day out, but how to enjoy it." An unpleasant hardness grew in his gut. Perhaps he'd eaten too much, but no, this was a stone of frustration, a different sort of barbarian at the gates of his existence. Not at the gates, he thought. Inside the walls, because my defenses are useless. "Well, I won't ever enjoy it," he yelled, throwing the box. The bird hopped back. Cereal scattered across the sidewalk. The bird hopped forward, keeping one eye on Beryl as it selected one piece of food at a time. Beryl glared at the animal. A dragging feeling of inferiority coursed through him, followed by an ugly, pleasant self-loathing. I deserve to feel this way. Something shined in the angled sun. A glossy rectangle had spilled out of the box. He pushed himself out of the chair, joints popping, muscles protesting. The bird bounced back nervously. Beryl ignored it. He crouched and retrieved the rectangle from the ground. It read, "Excitement, relaxation, diversion, pleasure worlds, never leave virtual reality. Ask about our lifetime options for adults and daycare for children." A tropical beach tempted from one corner of the leaflet. Bright icy drink propped in the sand. In the opposite corner, a woman, her cleavage squeezed between bandoliers, walked away from an explosion. Beryl's eyes lingered on the icy drink. It was even more enticing than a warm meal. His mouth swam with saliva. He spat, averting his eyes until the disgusting sensation passed. Then he turned the advertisement over. Panoply. Discover an abundance of diversion. An address followed. Beryl pushed back against rising hopes. A working virtual reality franchise is even less likely than a working food synthesizer. "You'll be disappointed," he chided. But like every other thought, emotion, and bodily craving, his defenses did nothing. The barbarians were inside the walls. Fantasies of relief danced across the stage of his imagination. He would go. He would try to find an escape from reality. He sneered at the raven. "I don't need your wisdom." The raven simply waited patiently for him to step away from the scattered food.